Welcome to another episode of the Lessons from the Cockpit show, episode 92. I'm your host, Mark Hasara, and for over 60 years, my passion has been everything aviation. On the Lessons from the Cockpit show, we interview some of the most fascinating and intriguing pilots, aircrew members, maintainers, and aviation enthusiasts from all over the world. We want to hear their stories, but more importantly, what did they learn from being in these extreme and extraordinary military, commercial, and even general aviation environments? Our purpose here is to show how does the aviation world work, but more importantly, increase critical thinking skills both in the air and on the ground. Some of the stories you're going to hear on the Lessons from the Cockpit show are being told here for the very first time. Today's one of those days. Gear malfunction. This episode of the Lessons from the Cockpit show is brought to you by Wall Pilot, custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar. These are beautifully detailed profiles of your favorite airplanes, meticulously drawn, that you can peel off and stick to your wall like the 135 you see above me. There are 152 ready to print right now aviation profiles, or we can do a custom one for you of your favorite airplane with your name on it from a particular unit that you like, even with a weapons load that you want. So go to wallpilot.com and take a look at the ready to print, or fill out a custom form and send it to us and let us do one for you. On today's show, we're interviewing Colonel Barrett Scooter Golden. He's a C-130 Herc pilot, flew with the Channel Island Guard out of California, did some interesting missions such as firefighting, but he had a really peculiar thing happen to him coming off of the Red Devil assault strip in Colorado, near Colorado Springs. So we're going to talk about that today. So grab an adult beverage of your choice, sit down, strap in, and let's begin the Lessons from the Cockpit show. Scooter Golden, welcome
Yes,
to
sir.
the Lessons
Sluggo.
from the Cockpit show, man. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
being
buddy.
on.
Good, good. How are you?
It's freaking cold out here today and snowing outside. If I could take the camera and go like this,
Oh, no.
we got snow on the ground and big BYU game today against Kansas.
Yeah, big one.
We're potentially going to be 10-0 tonight, but we're getting a lot of flack. People are
Oh,
going,
yeah.
BYU shouldn't be where it's at. No, but
Yeah.
anyway,
You can't let
uh,
your guard down. Kansas is going to give them a run, I think, looking at the point spread. Not that I'm a big bettor, but you
yeah,
never
I
know.
know exactly. And
Yeah,
and people are thinking, this can't keep going,
right.
because we almost lost last week.
Yeah, yeah,
In the last 3 seconds, kicked a field goal,
yeah,
and there's a questionable penalty that gave us some new life. So
for
anyway,
sure.
so like I ask all my guests, how did you get your start in aviation, man? How did you get bitten by the aviation bug?
Hey, Sluggo, thanks for having me on today. Once again, Colonel Barrett Scooter Golden, currently the Deputy Commander of the 139th Airlift Wing. And I'm really glad to share my story and hopefully I can inspire some youth into the aviation because, as you're well aware, as a retiree, a little bit of your heart hurts because you're kind of out of the game and you'll forever long to love that
Mhm.
aviation game, which I'm really excited that you continue to do things like this because we need to inspire our youth. My start, long story short, I was born and raised in Apple Valley, California. It's the high desert, considered Southern California. It's about halfway between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. A desert town closely adjacent to Apple Valley, California, was George Air Force Base. At the time, born and raised in Apple Valley, growing up there, I had a couple buddies I played baseball with or football with, and their dads were fighter pilots. Whether they were part of the Wild Weasels that flew F-4s or F-16s, I had opportunities to sometimes go out to the base. Some of our friends I went to school with would go out to the base and just hear the scream of jets flying by and see those fighter aircraft ripping around the desert. And I think that planted the seed in my heart. Like, this is pretty neat. Watching these guys walk around in their green onesies and things like that, I was like, this is amazing. But quite honestly, I didn't think I had the aptitude to do it. I was a smaller kid. I graduated high school as a 17-year-old. I was always smaller on the end of being in football. While I worked hard, I just seemed like that average kind of student, 3.0, 3.2 kind of guy. And I thought you had to be a valedictorian to fly jets in the United States Air Force, or at least have the aptitude to become a pilot. So lo and behold, I graduated high school. Just kind of followed suit with a lot of my friends. Quite a few of my buddies were going off to University of Arizona in Tucson, and lo and behold, I applied there, got accepted, and I was on my way. I had no idea what I was going to do in life, but interesting little fork in the road. We call it some misfortune, but I pinch myself every day that this misfortune set me off a different fork in the road, which set me up for what is, I'm pinching myself today, living my dream. My sister got sick. My father was a real estate appraiser. He paying for his own health insurance for his family was quite a bit more expensive than most people getting health insurance from their employers. And so, unfortunately, she was okay as she got through all this, but we incurred a lot of hospital bills and medical bills that summer. And mom and dad came to me and said, "Son, I'm sorry, but we can't afford to send you to college right now, just due to this financial misfortune. And so we're going to have to make you go to community college." And so the local community college is Victor Valley College, a great establishment in Victorville, California. The goal was to just go there for 1 year, and then perhaps I could catch up with my buddies in Arizona. While going to college, Victor Valley College, I was working construction jobs. I was working as a prep cook, just doing everything I can to stay busy. Okay. But quite honestly, it was a little bit of a downer situation for me in my life. All my friends were gone, and I was a little bit lonely. I was living with mom and dad still, and just working hard, but also going to school and just trying to do what I can do. I didn't like that situation, Sluggo. And so I just, something in my heart said, you know what, you need to go to the library at Victor Valley College, and you're going to put yourself in that career center area where all the books are that tell you about various careers. And I just went to the book section where it was all about airline pilots, and it was all about pilots, and it was all about Air Force pilots. And I was like, the seed had been planted long ago as a youth at Georgia Air Force Base, my buddies there. But then here I am in junior college, a freshman in junior college, and the seed is, and the fire is starting to spark again. I'm like, you know what? This is amazing. I would love to fly airplanes someday. Maybe I do have the ability to do that. So I went home and I told my family, and I told my dad I wanted to be a pilot and pursue that opportunity. And he kind of set up a verbal contract with me. He said, "Son, if you want to pursue this, show us that you have the aptitude to do it." Georgia Air Force Base had long been shut down. I believe they maybe called it the BRAC process back then or not, but it had long been shut down. It transitioned to the Southern California Logistics International Airport. And so they had a flight school there. And so I came up with an agreement with my father, and he agreed to let me try and get my private pilot's license the summer after my freshman year in college. And so for 3 straight months, again, back to work in construction, working various jobs, trying to just save as much money as I could to hopefully potentially go away to that college. I also was flying almost every single day, working on my ground school. And just in 3 months, I was able to crush a private pilot's license.
3 months?
My dad. Yeah, crushed it. I was flying almost every day.
3 months? Wow.
Yeah, I did it over a summer.
Oh, man.
But,
that's awesome, man.
That was it, yeah. That sent the seed to make me going after pursuing a pilot career. But lo and behold, I didn't want to catch up with my friends anymore in Tucson, Arizona. I started researching aviation schools and things like that, and I decided I'd like to pursue my passion and continue my aviation career and get the rest of my licenses. So I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott, Arizona.
Yeah, great place.
Yeah.
So many pilots have come out of Embry-Riddle. Absolutely. I mean, not just military pilots, but commercial pilots and all kinds of things. What a great place to learn how to fly. Absolutely,
it is.
So when you leave Embry-Riddle, did you have your CFI and all that kind of stuff? All those certificates?
As the degree program was, it was called a degree in aeronautical science, and the requirement was only to get up to your commercial license at that time.
Okay.
So I graduated in 1999 with my commercial pilot's license. But then the summer after I graduated, I actually went to a flight school out of Henderson, Nevada, right next to Las Vegas. And I did another crash course, and I got my CFI that summer. So interestingly enough, I was able to get that CFI while I was leaning on which path I wanted to go in, whether it was going to be that civilian airline path or the Air Force path.
People tell me that the CFI check ride is pretty brutal. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I can say that mine wasn't that complicated, but I've heard some nightmare stories of some check airmen that are pretty tough. But again, I feel like being very proficient and being very current and having kind of drunk an aviation fire hose for 3 years, I think really set me up for success in getting that CFI.
Yeah, and I'm sure, being at Embry-Riddle was a big help for that too.
I'm sure,
Big
absolutely.
help for
So,
that. Okay.
yeah,
What a prestigious school, I mean, they really do it well down there, and they've been doing it for a long time too.
yes, I do.
So you took kind of an unusual path getting into the
Right.
military. Why don't you go ahead and
Yeah.
tell us how that happened? This is a great
Okay.
story.
Yeah, so I started dabbling in the waters again, doing that due diligence on if am I going to go straight to a civilian path, maybe pursue that airline career, or do I want to get into the Air Force? Again, something in the back of my mind still kind of told me I'd love to be an Air Force pilot, but I just had something negative in my heart saying, "Yeah, you don't have the aptitude. You're not good enough," and things like that. But I actually signed up for Air Force ROTC when I first got to Embry-Riddle, and I was hoping to try and get some money. Again, Embry-Riddle is a pretty expensive school.
Yeah.
Paying for your ratings is pretty expensive. And so I was in Air Force ROTC for a couple of weeks in a hope of pursuing some scholarship money. At the time, scholarships are given out based on Air Force needs. And at that time, they wanted electrical engineers or aeronautical engineers or mechanical engineers.
Yeah.
And I wasn't willing to take that risk and become an engineer and possibly not get a pilot slot. And then I'd be stuck in the Air Force as an engineer. And so at that point in time, interesting, again, another story about a fork in the road. I was in Air Force ROTC and I hit Christmas vacation. I came back home for Christmas vacation in Apple Valley, California. And I knew one of my buddy's dads was an Air Force pilot in the Air National Guard. He was a KC-135 pilot out of March. So I had an opportunity to hang out with him, catch up with my buddy who was going to UC Santa Barbara, and he just started telling me all things about the Guard. And he was just telling me things that just were like sitting in my heart going, this is me. This is what I want to pursue. Have an opportunity to perhaps join the Guard, not have to move every few years and maybe perhaps stay somewhere where I want to be forever. Or if I do choose to move, it's kind of on me, And so I literally came back from that Christmas break, and I respectfully resigned from Air Force ROTC. Once again, I wasn't committed at that point in time. I couldn't get any scholarship money, or if I did, I chose not to because I didn't want to take that risk. I wanted to continue that aeronautical science degree because at least I'd have those commercial pilot ratings and the ability to go down the commercial path if I couldn't get into the Air Force. So I did that. I had the Guard in the back of my heart the entire time. I had not joined the Guard yet. But I started rushing the fraternity, rushing the sorority. I was checking out units at March. I was checking out units at Channel Islands Air National Guard, which is affixed to Point Mugu Naval Air Station. Great location. Runway ends at the beach, Ventura County. You got Malibu to the south, Santa Barbara and Ventura to the north. It's tough duty.
I've been there. I've actually flown in and out of there. Okay. And you're absolutely right, man. It's like Point Mugu and Vandenberg, just beautiful, just gorgeous place.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. Yeah, and I think you and I have chatted a little bit. Even though I was a high desert and a desert kid, I had a passion for the ocean a little bit. I figured out how to surf and things like that. And I thought, you know what, Channel Islands has kind of got my jam. This is the place I might want to be. So while I was pursuing college and finishing up college, I met a pilot board there. I might have even met 2 pilot boards, but I was a civilian. And at the end of the day, I think I competed very well, but they bottom line up front of me and said, you know what, we'd like you to continue to pursue a pilot slot here. But guess what? Once again, we want you to rush the fraternity, or if a female was doing that, it'd be at the sorority kind of thing. We don't select people from outside. We want you to join, put some skin in the game, join the Guard, and then we'll, consider you for another pilot selection board. And so I said, okay, great. Well, I'm going to be a college graduate. Where are your officer spots? And somebody gave me some great advice. They said, if you're going to be hanging out with pilots and interviewing with pilots to get a pilot slot, you need to be in ops. And the recruiter told me there's no officer spots in ops. I said, I don't care. I'll be a college graduate. Sign me up for anything. And there was a command post controller position. It was an enlisted position. So I graduated in June of 1999. And a couple weeks later, even though I was a college graduate, I was off to Air Force basic training. And I enlisted, went to Lackland Air Force Base, and then I went to tech school to be a command post controller at a Keesler Air Force Base.
Oh, man. And you know what? That's really a good place to learn flight operations, is in the command post.
Yes, it is.
I have worked in command posts. I have worked in air operations centers, and man, that's really the pulse and the heart of where things are happening.
Absolutely.
And so your Channel Island C-130 folks, they're flying some pretty interesting missions, like the fire mission, aren't they? That's one of the things on their docket. Why don't you talk about that for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. But, as a Guard, a person in the Air National Guard, you have 2 mission sets. One is federal, when the federal government needs you for a wartime tasking or something like that, they can activate you. But we also have a stateside mission. And a lot of times some of these stateside missions are handling domestic operations that are challenging. Well, of course, the West Coast and the Western United States seems to burn down often. And so interestingly enough, there's a modular airborne firefighting system mission. They call it MAFS. Channel Islands had the MAFS firefighting capability. And so as an enlisted command post controller, I had an awesome opportunity sometimes to go and train when they would train on MAFS and actually get activated when we go fight some fires. And so back to Russian that fraternity, it was a great opportunity for me to go and work as a dispatcher and go and talk on the radios to these pilots as they trained and went and put out fires in training, but also we got activated. I think I remember going to Spokane, Washington for a fire. I think I remember going up towards Sacramento for another fire. Okay. But it's an incredible mission. Unfortunately, I never got to fly that mission because I went to the weapons school when I was supposed to go to MAFS training. We can talk about that in a little bit. But the mission set is insane. They're flying really close to the stall margin of a C-130 aircraft, and they're getting incredibly low. And basically, the intent is to put out a fire line. They're not putting out the fire, but they put that slurry out to create a fire line to stop the fire from progressing. So it's an incredible domestic operation capability.
And you think about low-level flying. There's low-level flying, and then there's the MAFS mission.
Yes, absolutely.
Where you're down 100 feet, maybe 200 feet. And right. Now, Scooter, I've seen the commercial guys have like a little smaller airplane out in front of them.
Right.
Do you guys have a spotter out in front of them? Talk about the procedures on how you do this.
Yeah, absolutely. They have a lead plane pilot, and he's normally a U.S. Forest Service employee, and he's a pilot. And absolutely, he's the subject matter expert. He's the guy in the comms or having the C2, the communication capability with the people on the ground of what's truly going on. And so that lead plane pilot will bring you in and you follow him exactly to fly the same line he does. And he'll bring you in and basically try and tell you where to pickle off said slurry to get that line appropriately set to hopefully stop that advancing fire.
What kind of airplane is the Forestry Service guy or gal in? What are they flying typically?
So Sluggo, I had an opportunity to go in a lead plane ride as an enlisted member, and I think it might have been like a King Air type of aircraft, but honestly, I don't remember. Okay. And I'm sure they probably have changed their equipment a few times over the years since it's been 20 plus years since I've done some of that.
Yeah, well, and like I've said, I've seen everything from King Airs. I've seen Learjets. There's a famous video of that great big. It's either a DC-10 or a MD-11 that has, like I said, like a King Air out in front of it, kind of leading it along. And
for sure.
And okay, this is where I want you to put down.
Yeah,
because it's really an amazing mission when you think about it, and you're dropping a lot of that fire retardant slurry, going back, loading back up again, and it's kind of like. You drop your load, go back, get another load, go out, do it again, and we're going to talk about air, land, and airdrop here in a minute.
Right.
But, so how long did you do the command post mission before you got picked up for pilot training?
So I was enlisted. I got what was called my 5 level. I made it to senior airman. I was getting ready to do, since I got my 5 level, I was getting ready to do airman leadership school, get close to maybe put on staff sergeant. But I think I was only enlisted for about 2 years. At some point in time, I met an additional pilot training board, and I was selected. Finally selected. There was two pilot slot allocations that year, and me and a buddy were both selected to attend pilot training. Interestingly enough, Sluggo, you and I have talked a little bit in the background outside of this podcast, but as a C-130 pilot, they were C-130E model aircraft at my base, 1962 models, Vietnam era C-130 aircraft, very old. But I was programmed to go T-37s in pilot training and then T-44s, which is the King Air military version at Corpus Christi, Texas. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, the Guard Bureau called one day and said, hey, from T-37s to Corpus Christi, you're going to have a 6-month sit. And they're like, hey, there's this aircraft called a T-38. Would you like to fly one of those? You tested well enough to fly one. We love it, man. I got an opportunity, so it was amazing.
So, which UPT base did you go to?
I was at Columbus Air Force Base, class 0210. So 2002, I went to Air Force pilot training.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
and you got to fly the white rocket.
Oh man, yeah, they were cool brownish camo back then.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, really cool looking. But
Scooter, that is probably one of the best airplanes I ever flew.
absolutely.
Running around in an airplane that's Mach capable, flies like a fighter, and you have to treat it like a fighter. Okay.
Yeah.
But, and we did a lot of acro and stuff like that, but formation flying in the 38 was by far the
unbelievable
funnest portion of the syllabus in
yes
38s.
3 feet from another aircraft going upside down. There's nothing crazier.
No, exactly. Extended trail. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Remember going extended trail?
Yeah.
And for all the listeners out there, extended trail is you're in a cone 120 degrees behind the lead aircraft, and your throttles are at mill, and you're basically just using angular cutoff to stay behind the lead airplane, and you can do over the top maneuvers. And it is so much freaking fun. So much freaking fun.
Hey, the only airplane you could fly at 300 knots below 10,000 feet because the wings are so thin. Just a rocket ship.
Yeah, absolute rocket ship. And just so much fun to fly.
Absolutely.
So much fun to fly, And again, in my career, I look back on my, T-38s. I struggled with one thing in T-38s, almost busted out too. I couldn't do fix to fix.
They were hard though.
Oh, I know that. Because you had that old system, avionics in there, and none of it's like it is now. Okay.
No.
And I couldn't do fix to fixes. I had to go to an 88 ride, and
they tell you to do this kind of thing. You're like, what's this mean?
Yeah. You're holding your pencil up there and you're going like this, trying to figure out the winds and everything. And all of a sudden on my 88 ride, it clicked.
Good.
It clicked. I had the squadron commander in the back, and we went from Vance to Tinker, which is only like 20 minutes away. So you're just going through checklists like crazy because you're going fast, you're having to do all the holding and everything. And I hit it like within a half mile.
Perfect.
He goes, okay, well, we're going to do another one when we get back up to Vance. And we did another one up there and did the arc and everything like that. And he goes, dude, you did fine. How come it clicked on this ride? I go, I don't know.
That's the way pilot training is. Some days it just clicks. You can't even explain it.
Yeah. And he said, go forth and conquer, brother. You're awesome. You're good. Okay. He says, you're going to finish the bottom of your class. You're going to go to an airplane that has a navigator in it. Sluggo, you'll never have to do a fix to fix again.
Hey.
And he was right.
A doctor at the bottom of his class still called a doctor, Sluggo.
They still call a doctor. That's right. And
you made it.
But I will never forget flying formation in T-38s, as I'm sure you do too.
Absolutely.
The navigation stuff was okay and everything like that, but the formation portion of the T-38 was just freaking fabulous.
And what's funny is everyone I talk to says that the sound barrier ride is such a non-event. It's so cool to say you broke the sound barrier, but it was literally the most non-event you've ever done.
Oh, I know.
You see a little ticker on the airspeed. You're like,
you see like a boink, like it boink like that, and you go like, what? That's it? That's it? Yeah, it's quiet in the cockpit. Okay, we're supersonic, right? Okay,
right.
And you're like done. And you get back and you go, well, crap, that was nothing.
Exactly.
That was nothing. But I'll never forget one formation ride. I went to Vance, and they have those monster thunderstorm scooter.
Okay.
And we had a thunderstorm that went through, grounded everybody for a while. And me and another guy were the first ones off the runway. And as soon as we lifted off, we had the condensation vortexes off the wingtips. And Joe Drew, my instructor, says, Sluggo, today's going to be epic. Don't screw this up. Great vote of confidence from your IP. Hey, this is going to be epic. Don't screw it up.
Yeah.
But we're an extended trail, and we still a lot of moisture in the air. We're upside down over the farmland. The thunderstorms are now over Oklahoma City. It's popping off like every 3 or 4 seconds, and there's vortexes off the wingtips. And I remember this. You could see every little movement that Dino was making of the stick because the vortexes would bend like this.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't experience that. That's cool.
Yeah, and Joe Drew called that out to me. He goes, Sluggo, this is one of the best times to fly formation because you can see his stick inputs. See the bends in the vortexes like that? You
Yeah.
can tell where he's putting stick inputs in, okay? And
That's,
and then of course we're pulling G and there's condensation coming off the leading edges. There's these big ribbons coming off the wingtips, And
right.
my instructor in the back seat is like screaming over the intercom, "Can you believe they pay us to do this? Can you believe they pay us to do this,
Oh,
Sluggo?"
beautiful. That's awesome.
And I knew Dino and I did really well on the ride because all we did was get down on the ground and just talk about what we saw.
Yeah.
The thunderstorm popping off, the condensation, the stick inputs, and of course the two IPs are going, "I have the jet." They tap their head. I saw Joe Drew's tapping his helmet like this, and then I saw the other instructor tapping his helmet, and Joe Drew says, "I got the aircraft," and they're doing leaps and everything like that, and that's when he's screaming.
They're having their own fun.
Yeah, he's having their own fun, and he screamed again, "Can you believe they pay us to do this? Can you?" It was just great.
So cool.
T-38 formation was so cool, and it was such an incredible jet to fly.
Absolutely.
Okay, so finish up in pilot training, and off you go to, I'm assuming, Little Rock to learn how to fly Hercs.
Yeah, that's what it was. Another 6 months, 1 year pilot training, 6 months of Little Rock Air Force Base, C-130 aircraft. For those who don't know, it's a cargo aircraft. Obviously, it's the one right behind me, so you get a good image of it. That's a C-130J from Channel Islands. And it's the Swiss Army knife, in my opinion, of the Air Force. It has an air-land capability, an air-drop capability, and it can get in some really short, dirt, austere locations. It can airdrop variations of equipment, people. As we talked about, it can do modular airborne firefighting. It even does some insect pesticide types of missions in certain areas of our country that need it. So it's a really, really an amazing aircraft and platform.
Ooh, I didn't even think about it. Insect mission. Wow.
Yeah, they do a mosquito mission.
Yeah, just real briefly, explain to the listeners what air-land is and what airdrop is. Okay. You and I both know what that is, but a lot of listeners, okay, what does that mean?
Right, absolutely. I mean, what is a cargo aircraft in the Mobility Air Forces? The MAF of the United States Air Force is what we call that. We are there to sustain the heat and the hate for the guys on the ground, potentially. That's a good way to put it, right? And so how do we do that? If we're in a contested environment or a wartime environment, we got to go get beans and bullets to the guys that are going to guys and gals that are going to go kick some butt to the potential enemy. One way to do that, and the most accurate way to do that, is air-land. And what's cool about the C-130 is it can land on very long runways. We train to, it can go as short as a dirt strip. In our training environment, it's 3,000 feet by 60 feet wide dirt strips. Sometimes in combat, we can go to even shorter runways than that if we have the appropriate takeoff and landing data. We call that told. But I would say air-land is probably that preferred method because you're going to get all of the stuff there safely and not damaged and things like that. But sometimes you don't have that capability. One thing that's interesting is being a C-130 pilot, I was in Air Force pilot training when 9/11 kicked off. I thought I was going to be an Air Force pilot in the Air National Guard at Channel Islands, and I was going to go to Hawaii and surf every weekend and have a good time. But no, my Air Force career started with a war. And I've been in for 25 years, and that almost entire career has been nothing but a war. So I came back as a brand new co-pilot. And 2003 just kicked off and started deploying nonstop till about 2010. And so part of the air-land mission is what I just described. We also have the capability to do an airdrop. An example is when we were in Afghanistan during some of these deployments. Thankfully, strategically, we figured out that we could airdrop sustainment things to our friends on the ground to go get the enemy and give that hate to the enemy. We got the convoys. We were able to get a lot more convoys off the roads. And unfortunately, there were way too many of our forces and our friends that died from improvised explosive devices. So if they're fighting on a mountainside that doesn't have that capability of even that short dirt strip, I can do airdrop to them. A big thing we did in Afghanistan was called Container Delivery System, CDS. And it literally is a whole bunch of containers that can put up to 20 bundles in a J model 16 and a C-130H or E model. And you literally use gravity extraction. You slow your aircraft down, you drop your flaps to about 50%, you open your ramp and door, and you literally are flying at an angle. And once the green light comes over the CARP, or we call it the computed air release point, a line is cut, and literally gravity, the aircraft in the back of the cargo compartment of C-130 is on rollers, and the CDS literally will roll out of that aircraft. That's one example of airdrop. There's obviously many variations of airdrop. You can airdrop a Humvee, for example, or potentially a tank if you have a big enough aircraft. But that's how we provide sustainment when there isn't a runway to land on. The down part to airdrop is that one, we're not always as accurate as we can be. Surface winds and winds at altitude when you're dropping can change dramatically, and so sometimes we do not always hit exactly where we want to. We're pretty good at it, but sometimes we've had some collateral damage effects, and that really affected the hearts and minds in Afghanistan. As an example, if we took out some Afghani's mud hut or home, obviously that didn't help the ground force there with winning those hearts and minds. But an example was 2010. I was the chief of tactics in Bagram, and we were literally crushing historical airdrop records during that summer because we figured it out. Let's get the convoys off the road and let's resupply our friends with airdrop.
Hey, talk real quick about Airland when you do an engine running offload. This is really fascinating. When you see this, you like go, "Oh my gosh!" So talk about that for just a second.
Yeah, I mean, in a deployed environment, an aircraft, a C-130 aircraft specifically, is really loud. There's 4 props turning. It's a loud airplane. We joke, but we don't. There's some historical examples. Is when an aircraft lands in a contested environment, you turn into mortar bait. The bad guy hears it. They start getting out the 105 rockets and they start launching them. And so you want to get in there expeditiously and get out of there expeditiously. You're not going to go in there and turn off your engines and go to the FBO and have a coffee. In a combat environment, you want to keep your engines running and you want to get those things off. And so in the C-130 aircraft, as an example, we have a combat offload capability. That's what we talk about, material handling equipment. A lot of these austere locations don't have a forklift, don't have something that can get the cargo off of your aircraft. So we can configure our aircraft. We can pad up some of the pallets to where literally I can turn around at the end of a runway, set my brakes, lower my ramp and door to neutral, and then there's a procedure where we run a checklist and we add power to the aircraft and we release the brakes, and just enough to where when the loadmaster in the back says load clear, we're able to literally offload pallets doing a combat offload method. As an example, there's variations of combat offloads. So there's method A, method B, method C. That's just one example of that, but we do that often, and it's a way to get in and get out of an austere location and not be that potential mortar bait.
It's one of the most amazing things, scooters, I've ever seen, where, the C-130 lands, turns around at the end of the dirt strip, and literally pallets are just falling off the back of the ramp, and then off the airplane goes and it's gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're like over and done with in just a matter of minutes.
Yep.
And then folks are out there, taking the pallets all apart, moving stuff and everything. I mean, it's an amazing thing to see. Amazing thing to see.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned weapons school. You got picked for weapons school. What year did you go? And talk a little bit to our listeners about the syllabus of C-130 weapons school. Yeah.
So, interestingly enough, I was progressing nicely at Channel Islands. I flew E-models for a little bit. 2003, 2004. But interestingly enough, our base was one of the first bases to get the Lockheed Martin C-130 J model aircraft. We were flying 1962 Vietnam era aircraft, very old. They were seeing towards the end of their life, parts were very hard to acquire. And thankfully, we were able to get brand new aircraft, the J model. I was able to transition to the J model at the time. The minimum number of hours to become an aircraft commander was 700. And I just about had 700 E-model hours. So my J model school was my aircraft commander school. And I transitioned to that. And then I quickly advanced to an instructor pilot. Quick commentary on what the difference of an E model to a J model is. I like to equate it to the old rusty Ford F-150. And I just put on a Porsche 911. In my opinion, I think they should have called the C-130J a different aircraft because it is completely different. We're old steam gauges, old engines, capabilities of the E model were just not quite there, being such an aged aircraft. But the J model is all glass, has a heads-up display. The motors are so powerful that Lockheed Martin even had to derate the motors. It has a full authority digital electronic control. We call it a FADEC. So just lots of capabilities. Also with the J model, they created a variation which is 200 inches longer than the old E and H model. And so we went from 6 pallet position capability to 8 pallet position capability. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, your ground forces really love 2 more pallet position capabilities when you need to sustain them with either air, land, or air drop. You're just giving them that much more hate to go against and fight the enemy. So I transitioned to instructor pilot in the C-130J model, and I was full-time at Channel Islands Guard. I worked my way up to Chief of Tactics as a technician. I was a civil service technician as my employment status, so I was full-time there. And I just always wanted to continue to advance myself and just continue to be better at something. And so I started to see people wear this weird patch, and I was like, what is this weapons instructor course patch? I really didn't even know much about it. And until I literally, doing some due diligence, realized it is literally the Air Force's version of Top Gun. 6-month graduate level program, PhD level program, where you go to an advanced tactical program for 6 months, get your teeth kicked in, you're drinking through a fire hose, you're sleep deprived, but you're doing some amazing things to make yourself one of the best tacticians in your in your aircraft. And so I started asking around, do we have any patches here, any weapons graduates? And quite honestly, I didn't get an answer from anyone to say they ever had one in our history. I can't claim that, but I couldn't find anyone to say that Channel Islands ever had a weapons officer. I was like, I want to be the first. So in 09 Bravo, or the opportunity to apply for 09 Bravo, I applied, and I was eventually selected and able to go to weapons instructor course for the C-130. Weapons instructor course in the C-130 is also at Little Rock Air Force Base. At the time, it was combined C-130H and C-130J weapons school. And, it's a 6-month rigorous program. You start out with some pretty hot and heavy academics out of Nellis Air Force Base. You're combined with your CAF and your MAF bros and sisters, learning about all things, bombs, advanced tactical types of things. And not only that, but learn how to integrate with each other, become more integrated and joint. After your academics are done, you go off to your C-130 portion, and you just start out with advanced tactical maneuvering. Just learn how to advanced tactically maneuver that aircraft. You're learning about your tactics, techniques, and procedures. What do your chaffs do? What do your flares do? How do you maneuver this aircraft to defeat a said IR missile, a shoulder-guided missile, perhaps, or maybe a radar frequency surface-to-air missile. Eventually, you just continue to advance through various phases. And C-130, one of the phases in the C-130 portion is we go out to Colorado Springs, Colorado. We learn to do high, hot, and heavy operations and land on said dirt strips, which we'll get to here in a little bit about one of these said dirt strips almost killed me. But again, as you advance in your phases, you eventually go back and you do even more complex scenarios at Nellis Air Force Base. And this is kind of where you start to integrate and get towards the graduate portion of the program, where we're all coming together. Slogo, as you as a prior WOA and starting the weapons school with KC-135 know that we all come together, and this is where you start playing the war games. And you're flying these giant packages and have significant strategic level complications, and you're executing these war games. And sometimes you're even getting shot down to learn, some of these lessons in some of these situations. So,
yeah, advanced integration is one of the most incredible things to watch, particularly the second week. When we were doing it all at night.
Right.
I got to fly with the C-130 weapons school one night, and they put the bubble. They put the bubble up on for me.
Okay? Yeah.
And gave me NVGs.
Nice.
And man, that was something. And it was a hostage rescue.
Okay.
And we had A-10s, Predator, and a team on the ground, and they did a airland, picked up a couple of guys, and they actually had guys that got in the back of the airplane, and it was just freaking amazing to watch.
Awesome.
I mean, amazing to watch.
Yeah.
The hogs calling the C-130 in, okay, the area is clear, bring it on in.
Right.
The Predator going, yeah, I can't see anything else, bring it on in. And then the Special Forces team with, again, some volunteers, as they say, quote unquote, volunteers, from the weapons school that were the hostages. And that was amazing to watch.
Oh, I bet.
And I was flying with a member of the initial cadre, Moondog Jackson.
Oh yeah, I know who that is.
Moondog. that man is a character.
Oh yeah, he is.
But he was very helpful in getting us going too. But yeah, I flew with
Awesome.
Moondog. I flew that mission with Moondog,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
it was just great. But like you said, advanced integration. We're now it's 18 different divisions come together. It's the
Yeah.
most amazing thing you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's amazing now that they're integrating some enlisted weapon school things. They're obviously the intel portion is really important to that
Yeah,
integration piece. Adding the space piece to it, there's so many more weapon schools that are coming together because we realize that well, one thing is for sure is we become an expert in our own craft, but we are challenged significantly to integrate. And
yeah,
so to have that opportunity to learn lessons and fail together is going to make us
yeah,
go fight that war down the road, hopefully better integrated.
yeah. The KC-135 school now has a boom school,
Nice.
an AIC. They call it
Yes,
AIC. I can't remember what it stands for, but
you're
they have a
correct.
they have a boom school now too. That pretty much runs parallel with the officers.
Good.
And I went to graduation in June for the 24 Alpha class and got to see um, how they're doing things. And everything. It was the 25th anniversary of the stand up of the KC-135 school. So
Oh, congrats.
a bunch of us grads, there's 243 grads from our school now. We all
Yeah.
a lot of us came down there. It was amazing to watch. And again,
Oh, that's
they were
incredible.
still doing stuff too. But yeah, we were really really glad to see there's a boom school,
Yeah.
and these guys and gals that are boom operators are doing a lot of the same classes. They're doing a lot of the same scenarios, everything. And
Yeah, for
so
sure.
they have a different patch, but
Yeah.
you know what I heard?
What's that?
They're actually looking at everybody wearing the same patch now, even
Oh,
if
that'd be
you're a,
great.
even if you're a list.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's the natural way for this to go. I
Oh, for
really do.
sure.
I
For
really do.
sure.
So you mentioned a little bit ago that you were out on a Red Devil LZ and had an interesting thing happen to you.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about that? Because this is really an amazing not only situation but also recovery. So talk about what happened to you at Red Devil LZ in Colorado.
Yeah. So as the chronology of the career goes, I graduated in '09 Bravo. I had an opportunity to come back and right away go to Bagram, Afghanistan, and be the chief of tactics in Bagram, as I mentioned, dropping and crushing all these airdrop records.
Yeah,
Surviving and having a great time in combat, coming home. And then in 2011, I was still hanging out and talking to a lot of the cadre and the bros and sisters out of the weapon school, C-130J weapon school. This is a portion where I talk about, and I think it's a good lesson learned to discuss about with regard to complacency. I'd worked so hard in my career, and I made my way up to evaluator pilot, and I made my way through weapons school and did very well in weapons school. Been to combat numerous times, seen some very interesting things, seen some scary things. And so, at this point in time, I felt like I was just bulletproof. And I'll humbly admit I was a little bit complacent in life. I thought that I was just untouchable. And so I called up my weapons school bros and I wanted to train some new co-pilots that I had and bring them out to the Colorado Springs phase of their weapons school. And they love that integration piece to be able to
yeah.
fly with other aircraft and be able to do some formation mountain flying, things
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So they're like, come on out. We'll let you hang out for a week in Colorado. And on this day, I had an opportunity to bring out a brand new lieutenant. He was a co-pilot and actually had an F-16 guy. He was a major type, but he was brand new in the aircraft. He was an active duty F-16 pilot that home was Southern California, so he wanted to join the Guard. So effectively, I had two brand new JAM autopilots.
yeah.
One had a little bit of airmanship and experience, obviously flying the Viper. So we went out to Colorado Springs, and today's mission set was to go to Red Devil Dirt Strip. Red Devil Dirt Strip is an interesting thing. It is the highest dirt strip in the continental United States. It's right about 6,000 feet. The strip itself is about 6,000 feet long, maybe 60, 70 feet wide. I can't exactly remember, but it's also very challenging because it's in a bowl. And so for you to mission plan this thing or execute this thing, you just can't fly a normal 3-degree flight path in a stabilized approach like we're so used to. You actually got to fly a 6 to 7 degree flight path to get inside that bowl, and then in short final, you shorten it out to be a more stabilized approach. So when I went to the weapons school, I hit Red Devil a couple times. It was a great experience, and I was going to take these young co-pilots to Red Devil. And so lo and behold, we hit a couple patterns. I demonstrated hitting Red Devil a few times. And then it was the brand new lieutenant's turn. And so, interestingly enough, C-130 school back in the day, they did what's called an MPD program, Mobility Pilot Development Program. There were no co-pilots and aircraft commanders. They actually trained you right into the left seat all the way up to an assault qualification. So this kid was sitting in the left seat. I was the instructor in the right seat. He was qualified to do assaults. He was allowed to land on the dirt strip with an instructor. And so we brought him in, and he landed on this dirt strip. From my memory, the landing was firm. It wasn't anything egregious, but we landed. We took it down to the end of the taxiway. We did a 180, and we took off in the opposite direction. Interestingly enough, also, this C-130J model, Porsche 911 that it has a data card, and it'll tell you exactly what you touched down at, what VVI you touched down at, and if you exceeded any exceedances. So it tells on you. We'll get to that down the road here with the story. But so we do our 180 at the end of the dirt strip, and we take back off. And literally, we're in a pattern with a couple other H models from the weapons school, and I had another Channel Islands J with me. And so we're getting ready to beat up the pattern and just integrate with one another in the pattern. And we take off, and we start coming back around. And for training, the ground guys working were Kentucky Air National Guard STS guys, Special Tactics guys. Mm-hmm. They called me on the radio. Call sign was Ocean 11. Interestingly enough, Ocean call sign, we like to use 11, a little bit name recognition from the movies. Yeah. But they said, Ocean 11, you have a problem. And I said, interesting. I don't see a problem in my aircraft. And they said, your right rear gear is 90 degrees to the axis that it should be. And I literally didn't believe it. I looked down at my gear indications. My gear indication lights had gone out. We'd run our checklist. I had zero indications on my cockpit I had a problem. So I did not believe him. I said, all right, I'm gonna do a low fly, slow fly by you all, and I want you to tell me that again. Sure enough, did a slow fly by the STS guys, a couple hundred feet, and I said, Ocean 11, confirm your right rear gear is 90 degrees the axis it should be. And I said, holy smokes, that's not good. At that point in time, a lot of fear started coming into my body.
And the doors are closed, right?
Yeah, doors are closed, lights are out. I have zero indications on my cockpit, but after that second confirmation, I finally believed them.
Yeah.
But my other Ocean aircraft, my other J model from Channel Islands in the pattern, I asked them to join up on me, and they did. And I said, I needed a triple confirmation. I need you guys to tell me what you're seeing here. And then lo and behold, thank you for this awesome computing device called my Apple iPhone. They literally almost didn't have to tell me anything. They literally texted it to me, and they texted me an image, and I looked down at this image, and I see literally that. It appears to be my right rear gear completely 90 degrees to the axis it should be hanging out of my airplane. And I thought, holy crap, we got a significant issue here.
Yeah, it's significant. And you sent me that slide deck where I saw, I'm assuming those are the pictures that guy sent you that are in the slide deck.
Yep.
And you're looking at this and you're like going, the doors are up and the gear is dangling out the back. The one wheel is dangling out the back.
Yeah.
And you talked a moment about, there's fear that comes over you when you have a situation like this.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got a brand new guy sitting in the seat. You've got a lot of things going through your head right now.
Right.
Don't you?
Yep. Yeah. At this point in time, we know we are index at the Red Devil dirt strip. We know we got to go somewhere else. We got to find a bigger piece of rock to start thinking about this situation. So we decide I'm gonna have my wingman, my other C-130J model guy, stick with me, get on my a fluid trail type of situation, and we're gonna head back to Colorado Springs. No idea what we're gonna do at this point in time, but we're not gonna be landing at Red Devil anymore. So we slowly start making our way back to Colorado Springs. The commander of the weapons school at the time, Lieutenant Colonel at the time, now Colonel retired, Steve Hodge, he was actually flying that day. And he heard some of these conversations going down. And so one of the first bits of information he gave me and kind of caged me to this is, quite honestly, I'm completely fearful. I'm shaking a little bit. I'm going, holy crap, this is a big situation, probably the most significant situation that I've ever had in my aviation career. So I'm scared. And he kind of cages me a little bit. And he goes, Scooter, yes, Haji. And he's like, you're going to crash land an aircraft today. Got it, Haji. And he goes, I got one thing for you. When you crash land this aircraft, he's speaking firmly to me, and he's speaking confidently to me. And he goes, one thing I need you to do, you need to open every single escape hatch in that C-130 possible, because if you're going to crash this airplane, it's going to twist. And God forbid, if you're on fire, you won't be able to open any exits if you're twisted. So open everything you got. Once you put it down, get out of that jet. I was like, yes, Haji, got it, bro. And that kind of caged me to like, all right, let's try and eliminate the fear right now. Let's go back to our training and let's put our game face on and let's come up with a plan of how we're going to execute this mission. So eventually we get back to Colorado Springs. We have bags of gas, tons of gas, and we know gas creates fire. And so we're kind of calming down a little bit because we know we probably can fly around for a few hours. The plan is just to burn the bags of gas. I call up on the radio. I call to our mission planning cell at the weapons school, and I say, I need a J model pilot in the tower right now. We got a significant emergency, and we text them a picture of that. And one of the cadres, I got it, Scooter. I'm on my way. Lo and behold, they get up in the tower, and we're sending these pictures, and we're like, all right, man, here's what we got. And, we don't quite know what to do with it. In the Air Force, we have a Chapter 3, our emergency procedures checklist. Guess what? We started reviewing that checklist, and I knew it wasn't there, but I knew we have gear problem checklist in the -3, but there's no gear falling off checklist. No. But we're able to peruse some of the gear malfunctions in the checklist to maybe come up with ideas of how we're going to execute this landing. Another thing, being back to a prior command post controller, one thing I remembered as a command post controller is you can actually contact the manufacturer of your aircraft, and they can effectively convene a war room of the experts.
Yeah.
And
Skyhook.
Yep, that's it. And so I called my guy in the tower and I said, hey, get Lockheed Martin on the phone, and I want a conference Skyhook. And interestingly enough, it took them a while to try and find that ability to get the conference Skyhook going, but I think Google was their friend. And they were able to get Lockheed Martin out of Marietta, Georgia on the phone. At the time, the chief pilot at Lockheed Martin was Wayne Roberts, and he convened a war room, and they started getting some of these pictures. This is what's amazing about technology and the computer capability we have today is that we were able to have Marietta, Georgia see photos of our aircraft within probably 30 minutes to an hour of this actually occurring. Pretty amazing. But like you talked about, Slogo, the gear door was shut. We didn't really know what we had. And so one of our first ideas was, let's slow the aircraft down, let's run the appropriate checklist, and let's drop the gear and see what we truly have. And so we chose to do that. The whole time, the first picture, we thought it was our right rear gear. Once we dropped the gear, what we discovered is actually our right front gear. And it actually catastrophically separated from the strut. Just like a strut on your car, it's separated at that point in time and was hanging from the back of my aircraft on what was called a torsion bar. Yeah. And so now I truly knew what I had, just a giant mess on the right side of my aircraft with a giant dangling gear hanging off the right side. So at some point in time, we started having some discussions with Lockheed Martin. We started thinking about, do we want to try this thing gear up again in the previous picture that you've seen, or do we want to try this gear down? At the end of the day, we made a decision to try this gear down. So that was part of the plan. And then, again, at this point in time, it's just burning bags of gas. We're going to land this gear down. Another part of our -3 checklist that talked about if you have gear issues or if you think you're going to have drag issues, it says to land on one side of the runway opposite of which the drag device is going to potentially occur. So another decision we made is we're going to land on the left side of the runway because the drag might pull us right. Hopefully it doesn't pull us far enough to take us off the runway, but that was a significant concern with this situation. At this point in time, again, the angst is kind of letting down again. We're just burning gas and we're just kind of hanging out to the point where, like, I was literally so hydrated, I ran to the back of the aircraft and took a pee. One of the decisions we made, thankfully, I had 3 pilots in the cockpit, was we did a seat swap. I put myself in the left seat of the aircraft. And then we're just getting ready to, come up with a bingo to land this aircraft. And then lo and behold, my wingman calls me on the phone. We're orbiting on the eastern edge of Colorado Springs in a very non-populous area, because if this gear catastrophically fell off, we didn't want to cause any collateral damage, God forbid, kill somebody or hurt anything. But he goes, hey, Scooter, that gear is castering so bad in the wind, I'm really fearful it's going to rip off at some point in time and cause you more significant issues. And I'm like, all right, no more bingo gas. We're going for this thing. And so we're on a very extended left base. We're, 10, 15, maybe even 20 miles out. And Lockheed Martin's on board with us proceeding. tower, my buddy in the tower, the instructor pilot in the tower is ready to go, and we're all ready to rock. We got our personal protective equipment on, the gloves on, the collar popped. We even got our helmets on, ready to protect ourselves. God forbid we get into a fire situation. Interestingly enough, a tidbit to that, in this planning portion, we call the fire department up and we say, hey, foam the runway. As an Air Force pilot, I've always been taught, hey, you can call the fire department. They can say, hey, we're going to foam the runway. And what does foam do? It's literally that, a giant foam pad they can put all over the runway that will help you if you're on fire or catch on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Little did I know, they came back and said, we can foam the runway, but we can't put you out if you're on fire. You pick. I did say a few expletives at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I made a bad assumption. And so any Air Force pilot out there that listens to this, don't make that assumption. And I did make that decision. I canceled the foaming of the runway, and I said, I need you to have that slurry to put me out if I'm on fire.
Yeah.
So they were in standby, ready for that. As we get to about a 15-mile final, Lockheed Martin's war room calls us up, and they're like, hey, Ocean 11, do you remember the Minneapolis gear incident a few years ago? Again, another piece of grabbing back into my experience. I was an aviation safety minor in college. I really took safety very, very intentionally. I really am fascinated with safety, but I also studied it a lot. And so I did remember the Minneapolis incident that happened. They had a gear issue where they couldn't quite get their gear down and locked. And when they landed in Minneapolis, the right side gear collapsed and they hit their number 4 engine. The number 4 engine, they hit it, the top one. Yeah. And that spinning prop caught that aircraft on fire and really made that aircraft significantly more damaged due to fire. And I said, yes, I remember that incident. And they said, recommend you shut down number 4. Yes, agree. Time to compound this emergency by having it done on 3 engines.
Yep.
So we canned number 4, good, clean, feathered engine. The plan is to fly 100 flap assault speeds. What are assault speeds? Assault speeds are the slowest I could possibly fly that aircraft to get it on the runway. So motors canned. On this long base, though, what's amazing about this entire situation, I talk about a lot of motion sluggo, a lot of fear, a little bit of even shaking, a lot of even going to like some boredom at some point in time. But I said a little prayer to the Lord, and I will tell you, adrenaline is an amazing thing, and maybe the prayer worked because every ounce of fear exited my body. I was completely fearless. I was ready to just execute the mission, get this thing on the ground, and get my 5 brothers on this aircraft safely out.
I have a name for that.
What's that?
God's vector check.
God's vector check. Love it.
God's vector check.
Yeah.
You know, you've talked about, you know, your path went this way. That's a God's vector check.
Yes,
when
it
you're
is.
in the airplane and you're dealing with things like this, and all of a sudden you have that peace come over you. Hey, you're going to be okay. God's vector check. That's God's what I call it. Check.
I love it. He's given us all many vector checks in our life and forks in the road, even though we didn't want to take that fork.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay, so you're about 12 mile. You're at about 12-mile final. You're going to bring this thing in.
Yep.
What happens from there?
We bring it in. We're setting up. Thankfully, there was a crosswind on our runway. We're landing to the south on the left side runway out of Colorado Springs. There's a crosswind coming on our from this direction. And so we come in, I'm at assault speeds. I start coming in and landing on the left side of the runway. And I flare that aircraft just perfectly to let the crosswind assist and allow that gear to tuck underneath my airplane. Mm-hmm. And we literally skidded on that tire for thousands of feet. We have every escape hatch open. And at some point in time, we just start smelling the most acrid smell of burning rubber, metal, whatever. Yeah. And the loadmaster starts saying, we're on fire, we're on fire. We weren't on fire, but it was a lot of burning smells.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I just slammed on the brakes. We got that aircraft to a stop. Amazing, when that tire tucked underneath my airplane, I literally felt myself bouncing down the runway. I felt like Snoop Dogg.
Interesting.
All of the hydros on. It was just crazy right that thing. But we got it to a stop. Obviously, we had already reviewed our emergency egress checklist. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a boldface for us. We feathered all the motors. Thankfully, the aircraft didn't twist that much. We were able to open the regular crew entrance door, and we ran from that aircraft. got a good 300-ish feet away from that aircraft, allowed the fire department to come in, obviously assess if there's any fires to potentially put it out. Any aviators out there, one of the things that we joke about, but we don't because it sadly happens, is you got to watch out for the fire department. They're so fixated on coming to your aircraft that people have been run over.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a famous incident at that Asiana airplane that smacked the runway at San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
There was like one or two people killed because they got run over by the fire truck.
Yeah, sadly.
Because they're holding their phones up, taking pictures and everything, not watching what they're doing. Right. And apparently got injured from the fire truck. That's a great point. Great lessons learned. Yeah, great lesson learned. Great point. Yeah. Great point. So you guys get out of the airplane now and you're kind of looking back at it and you're like going, okay, what now?
It literally, once we avoid and duck and dive our fire department and they get on the scene and seem to be securing the scene, it literally is a mini version of the reenactment of Maverick and Top Gun as they return from their mission at the aircraft carrier. There's just lots of high fives, lots of hugging. Yeah. At that point in time, though, I knew this was a significant thing. And, the aviation watchers were out there. I had a feeling that potentially, the people listening to the scanners knew something was significant was happening. Yeah. My wife at the time was pregnant with my first daughter. And so I picked up the phone immediately, stepped away after the high fives and just said, hey, hon, something bad happened. I am safe. We're good to go. I can't talk long. I promise you I'm safe. And she, standard stuff, freaks out like, what? What? Yeah. I promise you I'm safe. And then lo and behold, it was about 30 minutes to an hour later, some of this information was actually being presented on national media. I think some folks were watching it even up to Fox News that day.
Oh, so. Yeah. And so your wife is seeing your airplane on like CNN.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So the plan worked out to notify her that all's good. So
Yeah. Sullenberger, there's a famous scene in the movie, where Tom Hanks, who's playing Sullenberger, calls his wife and goes, hey, there's been an accident. It's going to be on TV soon. I'm okay. I'm alive. I'll call you back. Yeah. And of course, that just sends the wife into a tizzy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And not only a tizzy, but a pregnant tizzy in your wife's case.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, you feel bad for that because it's tough for them to kind of endure that, especially in after you go NORO for quite a few hours after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And but your accident, again, you gave me the brief and everything.
Yeah.
It was not considered a Class A mishap. Talk about that for just a moment.
Yeah. And so that's what
the monetary damage. When I read that, I went,
right.
You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah. I am utterly amazed as well. The initial assessments were this is an absolute Class A mishap. Class A mishap was defined by, I think, over $1 million in damage at that time. I can't remember exactly what it is now. But everybody that assessed it, the maintainers, everyone's looking at these photos. Lockheed Martin was like, absolutely a Class A mishap. Other part to that's interesting is it is what it is. It's the process in which you have to play out, but you're a little bit guilty until proven innocent. So we're immediately grounded. We're immediately getting cordoned off to the medical group, and they're taking vials of blood and vials of urine, and they're making sure that nobody was under the influence or potentially on any drugs. Thankfully, that was all fine. Everyone was good there. But that aircraft was on the runway for almost about a week. They didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to get material handling equipment or a crane to get this aircraft off. My maintainers did a great job staying behind. We had to bring in a maintenance repair team, some more folks from Channel Islands to come up with a plan. Lots of coordination with Lockheed Martin on how we're going to get this aircraft up, get it towed.
Yeah, how are you going to jack this thing up? How are you going to jack that thing up?
I need to truly ask my buddy how it was done because I can't remember. But literally, Colorado Springs Municipal Airport was getting so mad. My maintainer would call me on the phone. I don't know if he was lying or not. I don't think he was, but he's like, "Hey, they're threatening to just bulldoze this runway or this aircraft off the runway because they want the runway back." This is a multi-use, multiple airlines coming in and out, and military aircraft.
Yeah.
But eventually, somehow they figured out how to get that aircraft stabilized enough to tow it off the ramp. And interestingly enough, once they were able to get the appropriate parts and fix this aircraft, they actually fixed it in Colorado Springs. They came back, and I'm reviewing some notes here. But what caused this thing? Obviously, the data card showed no exceedances. While my co-pilot did land a little bit firm, it was all within a tech order of procedures.
Yeah.
But with the findings, the first causal finding of this thing was it was called a defective glandlet was a part of a refurbished strut. So that strut was refurbished. And so defective, and talking further on to these guys, this was done at depot level maintenance. So when you C-130 aircraft, it goes through variations of maintenance. The home station, your home station like Channel Islands can do certain portions of maintenance, but then we got to take our aircraft to do heavier types of maintenance, preventative type maintenance, where they change out a lot of bigger parts and things. That's what we call depot level maintenance. Yep. One of the depot level maintainers actually cross-threaded this gland nut. And so I was the lucky guy that, this aircraft, who knows how long it flew, how many landings it did. We were the lucky guys for that cross-threaded gland nut to eventually catastrophically fail. The other causal factor was the right forward main landing gear gland nut failed, separating the strut piston from the strut cylinder. And Sluggo, per the long answer to your question, once this aircraft got fixed, the DoD damaged and destroyed property was only $171,000, $372. So $171,000 is all it was.
That's amazing. And when I saw that in the brief, I thought, like you said, you landed on a wheel, for crying out loud, that was dangling behind your airplane. Class A mishap. And then in the brief you sent me, $171,000. I'm like, what? You're kidding me.
He does.
That's nothing. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
And that airplane's flying today, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Been overseas many times, deployed many times, still in the inventory.
Oh, crazy.
So, yeah.
So, how long did you have to wait before you could fly again and get cleared?
It was quite a while. Thank goodness that they were very proactive in their investigation, but I think we had to sit for a few weeks. Obviously, to wait for labs to come back. Labs did come back. There were no exceedance on the card, so I mentioned that the crew was at no fault of their own in that situation. But it might have been maybe a month, and we were back up in that situation. It wasn't terrible, but it is also just an awkward feeling, knowing that you thought you did everything you've trained to do and you've done everything appropriately. And you worried just a little bit in the back of your head that something might have happened that you couldn't identify in that situation.
Yeah. Something that went wrong.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, so you guys live to fly another day, and obviously you've got some great lessons learned here, like the fire truck thing, foaming the runway versus putting the airplane out.
Right.
I wouldn't have thought of that. I wouldn't have thought of that. It's
absolutely
amazing stuff. So,
hey,
one last note I got down here is tell people what you do there in St. Joe at the Advanced Airlift Tactics course. Yeah.
So that's kind of what got me out here to St. Joseph, Missouri, the 139th Airlift Wing. Having lived at Channel Islands and been part of that organization for about 12 years, having become a weapons officer, I found a passion for tactics. I really loved instructing, and I loved tactics. And it just was something that
it gets in your blood, and it never leaves.
It does. It never leaves, and the enemy is a cat and mouse game. They're constantly developing a new, more advanced weapon system, and then we're in turn having to develop that newer chaff cocktail or that flare cocktail or that newer potential maneuver or tactic. And I just love some aspects of constantly being challenged in that arena. So as a co-pilot, before I deployed to my first deployment in 2003, we got activated for the war. We got activated for 2 years. I had an opportunity. My objective was to build as many hours as possible. So I was jumping on every TDY as possible. God bless my wife. She let me do it. But I was gone a lot from 2003 to 2010 with multiple deployments, but it was just a lot of TDYs as well. And so I signed up for a TDY. I had no idea what I was really getting into, but it was called the Aircrew course at the Advanced Airlift Tactics Training Center in St. Joseph, Missouri. So it's a 2-week course. I got to come out here to St. Joseph, Missouri. The first week of this course, you do a lot of advanced academics, and then you fly 2 sorties here at St. Joseph, Missouri. The first sortie is pretty cool because you get to go out to a range. You go out to the range called Smoky Hill in Smoky Hill, Kansas, and they light you up with emitters that simulate RF missile. Then you get an opportunity to do your appropriate maneuvers, and you get to come back around. And they literally shoot these things at you called Smoky Sams. They're literally like styrofoam missiles. And these projectiles come out of your aircraft simulating an IR, shoulder-fired man pad. You get to practice your maneuvers again and then employ your appropriate countermeasures. You go and do an airdrop. That's the first sortie. The second sortie goes down to a range in southern Missouri called Cannon. The A-10 boys out of Whiteman come, and they get to do close air support, and you get an opportunity to integrate with those guys. Again, you're doing a lot of advanced level tactics, a lot of advanced level airdrop types of scenarios. So that's like the first week of your course here in St. Joseph, Missouri. But then you jump into like a wartime scenario where the AATTC, the Advanced Airlift Tactics Training Center, they have a facility in Fort Huachuca, Arizona. So during the weekend, that's kind of like your spin up to we're going to war. And that Monday you step out and you get to go out to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. And the way the program's set up in the aircrew course is it's a crawl, walk, run. So once you head out to Fort Huachuca, you're kind of walking now. And then you get opportunities in Arizona to fly a lot of really advanced sorties. One of those sorties is called a low-level awareness trainer. They get you tucked into some of the most amazing cavernous terrain out in Arizona, and you are max performing that airplane. Lots of 60 and 2s, 60 degrees of bank, 2G pulls. That's a max capability of a C-130 and its turning capability. But you're just flying that, finessing that through the low level. You fly a lot of navigation sorties where they actually have a dirt strip out there. You're flying low-level trainers, simulating multiple airdrops, simulating multiple complex comm scenarios. You even get an opportunity to get jumped by F-16s. The kind of the running joke, or if you talk to a MAP person who doesn't know a lot about tactics, they're going to say, hey, I'm a baby SEAL. Just come club me if I ever get jumped by a fighter. But you actually learn that you can employ some tactics and actually defeat said fighter aircraft. And when I say that, I don't mean kinetically. You're not shooting back, but you can actually survive an engagement. Low is our friend. And what we discovered is, if you get down into the weeds and create enough of that clutter, they're having a hard time to shoot you through that kill chain. They're going to try and kill you with radar missile first, IR missile next, and then go to guns. And you employ your tactics, which we can't totally talk about here. But you get an opportunity to go, hey, I'm not that baby SEAL getting clubbed. I can survive in these situations. So it's an amazing situation. It was the most amazing 2-week experience of my life. And literally back to that fork in the road, God's vector, or that seed that gets planted in your heart. After 12 years at Channel Islands, I was like, I think I would like to work at the AATTC. And I literally called them out of the blue, cold called them one day. I was like, hey, do you got any J model dudes? And they're like, no, but we'd love a J guy. The Air Force started buying J models left and right, and pretty much the entire active duty fleet now has been modernized to J.
Yeah, all J models.
So I applied for a job, and I came out here in June of 2011, just literally a couple months after my crash landing, which was April of 2011. And I was the first J model guy at the AATTC staff. And then since then, I've worked my way up to commandant of the AATTC. I went over to become the mission group commander, and now I'm what they call the vice wing commander. They've changed that term to now deputy commander of the 139th Airlift Wing.
Yeah. You mentioned to me when we were talking previously, you were sending messages to your F-16 bros. Go ahead and talk about that for just a minute.
Yeah, hey, why do we love aviation? It's a community that we have a lot of camaraderie.
And this is a great story about that kind of camaraderie.
Absolutely. Camaraderie, and we all have a personality. And you go to war environments, you go to very tough situations, and sometimes you got to break some of these things up. And so we had a crew chief come to us and say, hey, you guys want to send a message to these F-16 bros? And so, absolutely. So he gave us what's called speed tape, and it literally looks like glorified duct tape. But speed tape's a tape that you could actually put on an aircraft, and it's just that. It'll stay on the aircraft under high speed. And so we were able to put "Eat Me" on the top of the wings. And we got some awesome photos. We got some awesome photos for the Viper dudes when they're seeing the C-130 saying, "Eat me."
And can you imagine the Viper bros rolling in on you, and they're like looking through the HUD and everything? They're like, wait a minute, what's written on the top of the wings? Eat me! Ah! They start laughing. Ah!
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But you know what? Like you said, man, that's the camaraderie thing. Okay, you're out training and you're training hard, but you're having fun while you're doing it.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure the targeting pod video and the HUD video from those intercepts when you guys debriefed must have been hilarious.
Oh, absolutely. I'm
When they
sure.
run that back, when they run that kind of stuff back.
Yeah,
That's
it'd be great to
awesome.
see that someday. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
And I've seen pictures of that too. Somewhere I'll have to see if I can find them and send them to you. I've seen
Okay.
pictures on the web of that, where
Oh, for
where
sure.
it's the F-16 HUD and you can see across the C-130, eat me. I'll see if I can find it.
Oh,
Anyway.
that'd be great. Yeah.
Well, brother, we've been going for almost over an hour. Anything else you
Yeah.
can think of, man? We've covered all the stuff that I wanted to talk about and all you talk about, man.
I guess just man, I hope a young aviator or potential aviator listens to the story and can take away some of the lessons learned associated with chase your dream. You never know what's on the other side of your obedience, and don't think you're not able to do something, and
Yeah.
continue to fail forward. I think having endured and being semi mediocre, I was still able to get some pretty big successes in my life just by continuing to just keep driving.
Yeah.
Always fail forward. And literally, like I said, I have a pastor at my church, and he says, you never know what's on the other side of your obedience. So just keep trugging, and you'll eventually get there.
Oh,
I highly recommend, if you're thinking about aviation, continue to do due diligence, continue to talk to old bros like you and me.
yep.
We love talking it, and we're here to help. Somebody mentored me one day. Somebody set that God vector on me one
Yeah.
day, and we're here to set you on that vector as well. 25-year career. My bell curve's coming to an end. I'm going to go kicking and screaming, but I know I'm coming
Yeah.
to an end.
Yeah.
And I'm pinching myself every day, just knowing the experience that I've had, the world I've seen. I've been at places where people spend $20,000 to go on vacation, and like you said earlier about the T-38, the Air Force paid us to go there, right?
Yeah. Oh my
So
gosh.
any of your listeners, just follow your dream and let us help you in any way we can. If anybody ever contacts you, Sluggo, and wants to chat with me, I'm happy to do it. Scooter41 on Instagram, scootergolden.com. I got a website out there. Look me up, Barrett Golden on Facebook. Send me a message.
And I'll put all that in the show notes so that everybody has that,
Okay.
And you know what? I've got on here, the reasons I do this, every lesson learned is a problem solved. I interviewed a guy yesterday who's a commercial pilot, cargo guy, with a cochlear implant. He lost his hearing.
Really?
And of course the military wouldn't take him, but he thought he was done,
Wow.
He thought he was
amazing.
Done. And a good friend of his says, there's other ways we can do this now. And he actually went and got the cochlear implant. He had all of his tickets. He was a CFII, the whole works.
Yeah.
And now he's flying Cessna Citation cargo jets and with a cochlear implant.
That's amazing.
And is doing just fine. Has no hearing in one ear, but it's got the cochlear implant in the other and is doing great. So
that's amazing.
I really appreciate you telling people and telling my audience, keep moving forward. Okay. Keep moving forward, because you never know when some new technology is going to come up that's going to, negate some problem you may have health wise.
Right.
I mean, we've got guys with, prosthetic legs flying airplanes in the military now too.
I got a one-eyed guy in my squadron right now. He tragically lost his eye in a firework. He's the only monocular pilot in the entire Air Force. He was kicked to the curb. He was absolutely kicked to the curb, and the dude had 20-something eye surgeries. We wouldn't tell. He literally went and started flying C-130s in the civilian arena just to prove with the Air Force that he could do it. And now he's flying. That'd be a great guest of yours as well.
Oh yeah, hook me up with him, man.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, hook me up with him. So
yeah.
Anyway, Scooter, hey, thanks again, man, for being here with me today.
Yeah,
this has been a blast. This has been great. Okay. And I have the ability to cut that video into the show. So I'm going to do that.
Great.
As part of the show. So everybody will get to see the video of you landing with that problem. Because it's
pictures
amazing,
worth 1,000 words. Video's even better. That'd be great to do.
Oh yeah. It's and I'll be able to cut that video in over your audio while you're kind of describing what's going on.
Awesome.
All right, Scooter, again, thanks for being on the Let's of the Cockpit show, brother. It's great to see you, man.
Thank you for having me, man. I just want to say that, I just met you a couple of weeks ago, but you're already a lifelong friend, man. It's this amazing part about aviation too. So I look forward to having a beer with you someday, and let's stay in touch, my friend.
All right, man. I got to come to St. Joe and see you, because I'd love to see your operation there.
Okay.
I'd love
Always
to see
invited.
it. All right. Thanks.
All right, brother. Have a good
Uh,
day.
All right, folks, this is again why I do this show. I've had emergencies in the KC-135 where there was nothing written in the books about it. And all of the lessons learned that Scooter shared with us on having a pilot in the tower, having your wingman take pictures and airdrop them to you. That's something that you can do with an iPhone that I didn't have available to me when I was flying airplanes. So there was a lot of good lessons here, and I really appreciate Scooter coming on and sharing his story with us. This episode 92, is brought to you by Wall Pilot, custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar. These are beautifully printed on vinyl, 4, 6, and 8-foot profiles of your favorite airplanes. 152 ready to print right now, or we can do a custom one for you also. Just go to wallpilot.com and fill out the form, and we can do one for you. This and previous episodes of the Lessons from the Cockpit show can be found on my YouTube channel or on Libsyn. Please go by and take a look at the All Ranks Club, my Patreon club, that you can join and get some really cool things, such as some of these profiles that I've been drawing. Also, question and answer night with Sluggo, all for joining my All Ranks Club. Folks, thanks for joining us on the Lessons from the Cockpit show. Next week, we have on a gentleman who has a very unusual journey to the cockpit because he's deaf and had to have a cochlear implant. And so we're going to talk to Steve about his journey to the cockpit on the Lessons from the Cockpit show. Thanks for joining us. See you again next week.